Welcome to this lesson about area and perimeter. One thing I'll just say right from the beginning is that you should have a calculator for this as we're writing stuff down. And I'm hoping also for some of you it might be a bit more of a review than something new. So what do we mean by the word perimeter? Perimeter is really the distance around an object. So for the case of squares, rectangles, and triangles, what do? We would add up all the sides. So let me just make up a rectangle here. Let's say that this side is 5 centimeters and this side is 4 centimeters. Now I'll put in little equality marks here and here just to show that though the two with one equality mark are both 5 centimeters and those are also, this one's 4 centimeters. So I could write it in, but that's what the equality marks mean. So how do we find the perimeter for shapes like that? Well, we would add up all the sides. So it would be 5 plus 4 plus 5 plus 4. And if I got my math right, I think that would be 18, and I would put centimeters. Now for circles, it's a bit of a different story. I'll try to just freehand a little circle here. Circle, it would be the distance, like if you were to walk this entire circle. If you were to start here and you're walking along here, and you end up doing the full circle, how far have you walked? I kind of tried to make it into an arrow there. How far would you have walked? So we use a different word actually for circles. We call it circumference. So we don't say what is the perimeter of a circle, we say what is the circumference of a circle, which means what is the distance all the way around. So to find that, we need to know the radius. So the radius would be the distance from the center to the edge. Okay, just remember that that is the radius. And you could, sometimes you're given the diameter. So the diameter would be the distance all the way across. So I usually use the formula C equals pi times, actually, pardon me, I usually say 2 times pi times the radius. So let's make up a number for the radius. Let's say the radius here was equal to, I don't know, 4 centimeters. So over here I would say the circumference is equal to 2 times, for pi, you can use the pi button in the calculator. What I'm going to be typically doing is just using 3.14. And I know the pi button is more accurate because there are more decimals that keep on going. But I'm just going to use 3.14 just for consistency so that if you're doing this, you can get the same answer as myself. And then times the radius, in this case it's 4. So in my calculator, I would type that out. And I get 25.12 centimeters. So that's good. Now, if I was asking you to round to the nearest tenth, you could also say 25.1 centimeters. All right, so that's how you do perimeter. Let's take a look at area. So area is the amount of space inside of a two-dimensional object. So for example, let's take a look at this rectangle. And I made little marks here. So let's say that this side is 2 centimeters, and this side is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 centimeters. How much area is inside? In other words, like if I were to color the inside, how much would I have to color? So it's all this stuff on the inside, right? Well, one way to think of it is if I were to draw some nice squares here, and I'll do it real quick here. Now, I didn't do a great job, but if we were to count the squares, right, we'd get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We would get 10 squares. And I made each square to be 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter. In other words, this is, each square is 1 centimeter squared. A square centimeter. So you see how the units work out in this case. What would be the total area? For this case, we'll say the total area would be equal to 10 square centimeters, or 10 centimeters squared. Now we can't always draw squares and count the squares, so we can have some formulas. So for a rectangle, we're going to say that the area is equal to the length times the width, or sometimes you'll hear me say the base times the height. But really it's those two sides. So in this case 2 times 5. So our example would be area equals, or maybe 5 would be the length, 5 times 2. So my area is going to be equal to 10. And then look at the units. Hey, it's centimeters. So when I multiply centimeters times centimeters, I get centimeters squared. So that would be my answer. For a triangle, it's a little bit different. So for a triangle, we have to identify not all the sides, but we have to identify a base and a height. Okay, so here I've drawn a base, and here is a height. So the important thing is that the angle between the base and the height is 90 degrees. So you could really draw, you could have any side as a base, right? On this one here I could say, oh, like here's the base, and then the height would be, you know, drawn 90 degrees from it and hits the other side. So I didn't do a very good job there. Let me try one more time. Okay, so in this case you could have a height that's drawn like that. All right, so here would be my base, and here is my height. This is the hardest part sometimes, is finding the base and the height. So if it's given to you and you've got all these different sides, these are the only two sides you need. This side here, we don't need the length, and this side here, we don't need the length. So what's the formula? The formula is going to be area is equal to 1/2 times the base times the height. Or you can type in your calculator 1 divided by 2 times the base times the height. You could also put 0.5, which is the decimal way of writing the fraction, times base times height. All right, so let's give some numbers here. Let's say that this base is 5 and this height is equal to 3. So we would have 1/2 or 0.5 multiply the base, which is 5, multiplied by the height, which we said was 3, and you do that in your calculator, you're going to get half of 15, so you're going to get 7.5. And again, let's say if these units were centimeters. Now in area, the units are centimeters squared. Okay, so that's something very something that students often forget about, is that if you're talking about perimeter, it's really, you're talking about a length, like the distance around, and so your units are just going to be millimeters or centimeters or meters or whatever it is. But when you're doing area, then the units are always squared. Okay. For the area of a circle, the area of the circle is a little bit more complicated, and this one we're definitely going to be using radius. It is pi times radius squared. So let's do an example maybe where this is, let's call it 4 centimeters. So we'll say, here I'll go over here so there's more room. Pi is 3.14 times my radius is 4. Now squared means multiplied by itself. So you could either use your squared button in your calculator, or you can say 3.14 times 4 times 4. So when I do that in my calculator, I get 50.24. And my units are centimeters squared. So again, if I'm being asked to round to the nearest tenth, I could change that to 50.2 centimeters squared, and that would be my answer. All right, so here are a couple practice questions. So we're asked to find the perimeter, and we're asked to find the area of each one. Okay, so the perimeter for this one is going to be 9 plus 4 plus 9 plus 4. So the perimeter is going to be equal to, I think that's 26 centimeters. My area over here is, remember, it is the length times the width, or the base times the height, however you want to say it. So it's going to be 9 times 4. So my area is going to be equal to 36. And remember the units in this case, centimeters squared. So there's the first one. Let's try our second one here. Now for this, we don't have the information to figure out the perimeter, because it's going to be 4 plus whatever this side is plus whatever this side is. So we can't figure it out actually. So that's a bit of a tough one. So perimeter unknown. How about that? The area we can do. Area would be equal to 1/2 times the base times the height. So we could type in 0.5, or you can do 1 divided by 2 in your calculator, multiplied times 4 times 6, and I think that works out to 12. And then the units, of course, centimeters squared. We got one last one here. Now for a circle, we don't call it perimeter, but we call it circumference. Circumference is 2 times pi times r. So it's going to be 2 times 3.14 times 4, which I get an answer of 25.12 centimeters squared. I think we did that one already. Now the area is going to be equal to pi r squared, or pi times r squared. So the area is going to be equal to 3.14 times 4 times 4, which again, I think we've done this one, 50.24 centimeters squared. All right, so I hope that makes sense for you, and I will see you in class.